Hello and welcome to the arcade. You know, when I was a kid, two of my favorite things to do were to play outside and to play with action figures. Outside was always an adventure. My family and I lived in a small suburban neighborhood where we knew everyone on our street. That meant that my twin brother and I had no fears about exploring from our house at the front of the street all the way down to the cul-de-sac and back. That whole area was like our playground. Just a wide open environment for us to pretend that we were on adventures, in the middle of a battle, or sneaking around an evil haunted castle or whatever. And playing with action figures was the coolest way to become a general, a commander, an overlord of an entire army or two armies. The longer the years went on, the more action figures we collected and the bigger the battles became. And you know how they say that boys never grow up, they just get more expensive toys? Well, I find that to be particularly true with video games, specifically the subgenre known as the Battle Sandbox. Games like Star Wars Battlefront, Mount & Blade, and Arma 3 let us experience in a virtual reality what we experienced in our imaginations as kids. There's a certain kind of nostalgia associated with this type of game that really resonates with me. It's not always about the battles being big necessarily, but more about the immersion you feel as just one soldier inside battles of a huge scale with lots of chaos and really big stakes. And feeling like there are two pretty balanced sides of armies clashing. You find yourself becoming just one small part of a giant war machine, just one small piece of the overall puzzle of the battle. So today I want to talk about the video games and specific battles in those games that evoke the same feeling. You can find this type of feeling in games that aren't necessarily battle sandboxes, but have those moments that still feel like that. The idea I'm kind of getting at is the video game battle that makes you feel small. So let's talk about it. Let's get this out of the way first. The best battles in video games are definitely found in the RTS genre. There's no getting around that for me. Rome Total War, Supreme Commander, Battle for Middle-earth. These are some of the biggest scale, most epic conflicts ever seen in games. But these are experienced from the bird's eye view. You're the commander, not the foot soldier. So while these battles have the potential to be bigger and more epic, they have a perspective that in some cases is outmatched by the battle sandbox. And by the way, there are a ton of great RTS games that I absolutely love, so let me know in the comments if you want me to cover that topic in another video. And yes, some of the games I'll talk about in this video aren't necessarily battle sandbox or battle simulator games, but they do have those moments, at least in one level or two, where it does feel like that. Sound good? Okay, let's go. One of the first games that really sparked my love for this subgenre was none other than the legendary Star Wars Battlefront. I remember seeing trailers and a commercial or two for the game before it came out. And once it finally released after what felt like ages of waiting, my brother and I rented it from Blockbuster and then bought our own copy to keep shortly after that. This was the Star Wars game that I had been waiting for my whole life. I have played so many Star Wars games and truly enjoyed most of them, but this was something on another level. I had always been so interested in the individuals that you see in the huge conflicts playing out in the movies. The stormtroopers, the clones, the rebels, the battle droids, they all had this draw to them that made me wish I could see the Star Wars universe from their eyes. And Star Wars Battlefront finally delivered that, and beautifully. Now, this might be a controversial opinion, but I actually prefer the first Battlefront over Battlefront 2. I just feel like the controls are better, the game benefits from being a little simpler, and having no ability to play as heroes keeps things grounded and doesn't ever let the power of wielding a lightsaber and the Force get to your head and ruin the fun of the battle simulator. When you're on the floating platforms of Bespin, or in the hallways of the cloning facility on Kamino, or in the snowy plains of Hoth surrounded by your battle brothers, charging at the enemy all together, that's where this game really shines and leaves a huge lasting impression. That feeling of camaraderie, of duty, of purpose, and the intensity of the conflict all comes together to create a type of experience in gaming that is unlike anything else. And the fact that it's all in the Star Wars universe is just the icing on the cake. Star Wars was something that most kids loved back then, myself included. And a ton of the time that my brother and our best friend and I spent playing together was spent pretending that we were Star Wars characters. This game just let us live that out in the interactive medium of video games, and it will forever be a favorite of mine for that. Now, even though I personally prefer Battlefront 1, I do briefly need to talk about Battlefront 2, specifically for the XL battles included in the PC version of the original release and in the console versions of the Battlefront Classics collection. XL vastly increases the number of units on the battlefield at a time. Where before it was limited to something like 32, now it seems like it's more than doubled. XL mode was only available on 3 maps, Geonosis, Hoth, and Kashyyyk, but it is still incredibly fun to replay those maps with a greater number of soldiers on both sides. It elevates the conflict even closer to the scale of the movies and increases the chaos to a level that you might find on a real battlefield. Another game I discovered kind of young was Battlefield 1942. Actually, my brother brought it home if I remember correctly, which surprised me because he wasn't as much of a PC gamer as I was back in those days. Nevertheless, he showed me how the game worked and we played it for probably hundreds of hours in the next couple of years, give or take. Battlefield 1942 was actually the first game in the Battlefield franchise, which my brother would go on to play a lot of, but I found myself uninterested in after Battlefield 2. I think it was because I kind of switched over to the Halo franchise and Call of Duty Black Ops that got me off the Battlefield train, but Battlefield 1942 is still one of the shooters that I remember most fondly from that era. The game works very similar to Star Wars Battlefront and was probably the inspiration for those games. One of the things that makes Battlefield 1942 such a great fit for this video is the fact that it actively encourages teamwork over trying to be a hero. You're much better off coordinating with your team, focusing on important control points and other objectives like taking over mounted machine guns or vehicles, than you are trying to become a lone wolf and take down the entire enemy team down from behind their own lines. It may be possible to do that, but more than likely you're just going to cost your team a win if you try to play like that. Okay, now Freedom Fighters is not a battle sandbox or simulator. It's a third-person tactical shooter game set in New York City amidst a Soviet Union occupation. The most unique mechanic of this game is the charisma system that allows you to recruit fellow freedom fighters during your missions, allowing you to control a small group of soldiers during levels. You can command them to do different things like stay with you, defend a certain area, or attack enemies head-on. The max amount of charisma is 16, meaning that's how many individual soldiers you can command at once. And when you reach that level, the battles in this game start to feel truly epic. It is admittedly a much smaller scale than the other games in this video, but it still evokes that feeling of fighting alongside your fellow soldiers and being just one piece of the overall picture of the battle. This was another game that was originally a rental from Blockbuster, and I rented it multiple times before finally saving up enough of my allowance money to buy my own copy. I wore that game out back in the day, and I've had a ton of fun revisiting it in these last few years after rediscovering my love for it. It's available now on PC through Steam or GOG, and it is still an absolute blast to play and has held up extremely well despite being over 20 years old. Another game that is technically not a battle simulator is Spartan Total Warrior, but you can probably already tell that this game evokes that feeling that we're talking about. Massive battles with huge numbers of soldiers on both sides and stakes that feel like they actually matter. The player can feel a little overpowered in this one sometimes because you do get to use a lot of insane special abilities. But there are some absolutely epic moments in this game that really nail that feeling that I'm looking for. Especially in the army clash moment from the third mission in the game. You and your fellow Spartans charge head-on against an opposing army of Romans violently clashing in the middle of the battlefield. This is like a moment from a movie. Troy, Lord of the Rings, and even the Narnia movies have these incredible moments where two army sides clash together, and that feeling is something really profound in a way. It's like the true climax of the battle, everything that all your preparation was leading up to. And the same goes for Viking Battle for Asgard, although this game drastically increases the scale of the battles that you get to partake in when two huge armies are clashing. The battles where you're liberating the islands are some of the most jaw-dropping battles you might ever see in a game from the 7th generation of consoles. Viking Battle for Asgard is available on PC these days, which definitely runs with better performance most of the time. This game could definitely be considered an underrated gem from the Xbox 360 and PS3, although it does have its flaws. It's still incredibly fun at its best moments, even while being buggy and tedious at its worst. But when you consider the time period and the hardware that this game was developed for, you can kind of forgive its shortcomings. Especially once you get to partake in some of the bigger battles and get to feel that sense of awe that this game rewards you with if you stick with it. And now for the ultimate battle sandbox, Mount & Blade Warband. I discovered the first Mount & Blade game in 2008 via a demo on Steam. I was so cheap back then that I probably put 100 hours into the demo alone before finally, after a year of waiting, the game went on sale and I bought it. On eBay, not on sale. Anyway, so Warband came out a little bit later, and I got that and the expansion called Viking Conquest. The game had a little bit of a rough launch if I remember correctly, and there's still a little bit of jank to this one and the sequel Bannerlord. But the developers were and are still pretty active about keeping their games updated and patched, at least whatever their latest release is. But even if the devs hadn't patched Warband to your exact desired specifications, that's okay because probably someone else has. The modding community for this game is completely unhinged in the best way. There are full conversion mods for Mount & Blade Warband that totally transform the game into Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or even Star Wars. But the base game itself is so good, you really don't need mods to get a fantastic battle sandbox experience. The appeal of Warband is not really just the battles though, to be honest. And that's what makes this game so great. The game takes you through a whole story totally unique to you. In the campaign, you begin as a lone adventurer, but every battle you survive, every soldier you recruit feels like a huge step forward. The game never tells you what to do, and that's because you don't have to do anything. There's no goal or objective other than the ones that you set for yourself. The game lets you grow naturally into a warlord, a noble, or even a king if you can manage it. And the more you grow your own army or kingdom, the more you realize how dynamic this world truly is. Other factions are constantly waging war with each other, taking over each other's castles, dethroning kings to take their place, and this can all happen without any input from you. Sure, you can partake in this stuff too, but at first, you'll be so small that this stuff to you is just a little notification in the bottom of the screen. But once you finally reach the stage where you can participate, there's really no other feeling like it in any other game. And of course, we have to talk about, the battles. That's kind of what this video's about. There's a real weight to the combat. Every swing of your sword matters. Formations and positioning on the battlefield matters. Things can get away from you quickly if you're not careful and don't plan ahead. You're not the star of any scripted event. You have to take control to earn your victory. And sure, you do get to command your troops, but it's right from the battlefield, right from their midst, right alongside them. And you better fight with your army every time because their AI is untrustworthy. Warband is truly the best battle sandbox, not just because of the battles, but because of the freedom that it offers. It lets you use your imagination to write your own story in a world that doesn't care about you until you make it care. So those are the best battles in video games. The ones that feel like they truly have scale, stakes, and the chaos that would unfold on a real battlefield. Or in those pretend battles that we had as kids swinging sticks at bushes and trees. This type of battle in a video game is the culmination of all my imaginations about battles from movies, books, and my own adventures as a kid. These are the kinds of video game battles that make me feel like a kid again. And isn't what this hobby is all about, at least sometimes? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And as always, until next time, thank you so much for watching.